I ain't get signed for no motherfucking hit. I got signed, shitty job, and I motherfucking quit. I got signed to the booth, and I come and I spit. Okay, yeah, I mean, damn, it'd be nice to be rich. Like sitting at the Heat game and feeling like a star. Cause Jimmy Butler knows who you motherfucking are. Have a driver with the stars, and a whip with a bar. And your ex hear your song with his bitch in the car. Like, what my skin? I ain't get signed for no motherfucking hit. I got signed, shitty job, and I motherfucking quit. I got signed to the booth, and I come and I spit. Okay, yeah, I mean, damn, it'd be nice to be rich. Like sitting at the Heat game.
That morning, the Heron Lake apartments remained as peaceful as ever. A call came in to the Columbia Fire Department. At first glance, nothing seemed unusual, just a report of water leaking from a downstairs unit. They arrived expecting to handle a routine technical issue. Maybe a burst pipe. Maybe a faulty appliance. Just another ordinary call. But the moment that door swung open, everything changed. There was no sound of running water. No puddles. No damp smell. Nothing. There was only silence. Complete. Absolute. On the floor lay a woman, motionless, her face pale under the faint light seeping through the blinds. Beside her, a man slumped forward, a severe wound visible on his body. A firearm rested quietly between them. The entire scene felt frozen in time, as if, moments before, a cry for help had echoed through the room, but no one was there to hear it. That woman was Jalen Sarah Hasty, 29 years old, a mother to a young daughter, the backbone of her family, a strong, kind woman who lived for her child and for her community. And the man beside her, none other than her ex-boyfriend, the one who once held her hand through days of love, only to become a shadow lurking behind her, something dark and unshakable that no one could quite name. The story you're about to hear isn't just an isolated case. It's a mirror reflecting all the warnings that went ignored. It's the consequence of silence. The ending of something that could have been stopped, if only someone had listened sooner. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so we can continue uncovering these haunting, heartbreaking stories, and leave a comment to let me know where you're watching from. This story begins with a call that seemed harmless, but it ends with a truth no one saw coming. Jalen Sarah Hasty was born on the 22nd of April, 1994, in South Carolina. She grew up in a multi-generational household where family bonds were everything. From a young age, Jalen showed a calm and mature personality, always willing to take on responsibility. As she grew older, she became not only her mother's pride, but also the emotional anchor for her entire family. Jalen wasn't born into luxury, but she never let her circumstances become an excuse to stop moving forward. She studied at Midlands Technical College, initially pursuing a career in healthcare and working as a pharmacy technician. But eventually, her path shifted toward real estate. At Cardinal Apartments, she was hired as an assistant property manager, a role in which she showcased exceptional organizational skills, communication, and professionalism. So much so that many residents in the complex knew her by name. Outside of work, Jalen was a devoted single mother. Her daughter, little Kinsley, was at the center of every decision she made. Jalen constantly strove to balance her career and family, never allowing herself to neglect either responsibility. To her friends and colleagues, she was calm, a great listener, and never one to complain. At family gatherings or community events, Jalen would often be found standing quietly in a corner, not loud or attention-seeking, but always stepping forward at the right moment when someone needed a helping hand. In her personal life, Jalen had once been in a relationship with Canado Bates, the same man found in her apartment on that fateful morning. Their relationship began quietly, without much public attention. They met through mutual friends and gradually grew close. In the early stages of their relationship, Jalen seemed to believe that Bates might be someone she could build a future with. He had been introduced to her relatives and had even attended small family gatherings, but over time, a distance began to form between them. It wasn't the result of a major conflict, but rather the quiet build-up of small, unspoken things. Jalen was a private person, so even as the relationship faded, she didn't talk much about it. The breakdown didn't happen all at once. It unfolded the way people sometimes drift apart slowly until they became strangers. What Jalen never expected was that the name she thought she had left behind would become the doorway to a haunting that refused to end. And by the time she left this world, that person had never truly stepped out of her life. After the breakup, Jalen still tried to keep everything within the bounds of normalcy. She didn't complain, didn't share too much with others, and never made her private life public on social media. But those closest to her began to notice a shift, subtle, not loud yet enough to make them worry. Jalen would often startle whenever her phone buzzed. She began glancing over her shoulder when walking into the parking lot. And on more than one occasion, when someone brought up Bates, her eyes would shift away and her lips would press tight, as if merely saying his name made the air feel heavier. Canado Bates didn't completely disappear after the breakup. On the contrary, he began showing up in places he had no reason to be. One neighbor even reported seeing him standing near Jalen's car late at night, just watching, saying nothing. Some said he would often wait in the parking lot beneath her building, even though he had no reason to be there. At first, these actions were brushed off as harmless, but over time, everyone began to see the truth. This wasn't care, it was surveillance. Jalen had once recorded her emotions in a personal journal, handwritten entries that were discovered after the incident. In them, she described the feeling of being controlled, watched, and subjected to relentless psychological pressure. She had come to realize the shift in Bates, from a man who once seemed caring to someone who made her feel unsafe, even in the comfort of her own home. But like so many others, Jalen may have convinced herself that she was simply overreacting. Or perhaps she believed that staying silent was the only way to avoid making things worse.
Good morning.
Her family had urged her to be cautious. Her mother, Monica, had asked more than once, "Are you sure everything's okay?" But Jalen would usually respond with a faint smile and the familiar line, "I can handle it." No one knew that behind those words of reassurance was an iceberg drifting slowly toward the edge. The terrifying part wasn't how fast things unfolded, but how everything had once been there, clear enough, yet brushed aside. The subtle signs, the long silences, the uneasy glances, the nightly ritual of checking the locks. Piece by piece, they formed a warning picture, but no one truly saw it. Or if they did, they weren't forceful enough to intervene. And so, the danger remained. Close. Far too close. While most toxic relationships fade into a cold silence, in Jalen's case, silence itself became a long burning fuse. She never made her story public, never spoke badly about her ex online, never posted cryptic messages. But that silence seemed to be something Canado Bates couldn't accept. He wasn't loud, he didn't lash out, but his presence grew more frequent, more invasive. Like a shadow that refused to leave, he lingered, haunting every corner of Jalen's life. Jalen was often seen walking faster than usual when leaving her apartment building. One day, a co-worker recalled how she turned her car around and returned to the parking lot just because she spotted a familiar figure standing near the entrance. There was even a time she took 3 days off work without any explanation. All of these seemed like minor details, but when pieced together, it became clear. Jalen no longer felt safe.
I ain't get signed for no motherfucking hit. I got signed, shitty job, and I motherfucking quit. I got signed to the booth, and I come and I spit. Okay, yeah, I mean, damn, it'd be nice to be rich. Like sitting at the Heat game and feeling like a star. Cause Jimmy Butler knows who you motherfucking are. Have a driver with the stars and a whip with a bar. And your ex hear your song with his bitch in the car. I ain't get signed for no motherfucking hit. I got signed, shitty job, and I motherfucking quit. I got signed to the booth, and I come and I spit. Okay, yeah, I mean, damn, it'd be nice to be rich. Like sitting at the Heat game and feeling like a star. Cause Jimmy Butler knows who you motherfucking are.
Bates didn't leave threatening messages. He didn't make angry phone calls. But he showed up at Jalen's workplace, around her apartment complex, in the lower-level parking garage. Always from a distance, just watching, never approaching, never causing a scene. But that's exactly what made everything more terrifying. She couldn't call the police because he hadn't done anything wrong. She couldn't ask for help because there was no concrete proof. Jalen was trapped in a gray zone where the danger was real, looming, undeniable, yet never quite enough for anyone to step in. At one point, she wrote in her journal, "I feel like someone living inside a glass house, watched with every step and no one believes me." Those words now read like a warning, but back then, they were just quiet thoughts tucked away in an old notebook, hidden in her nightstand drawer. A close friend of Jaylen recalled, "She once told me it felt like he still had control over her, even long after they broke up. No calls, no messages, just knowing he was nearby was enough to make her feel like she couldn't breathe." And then one day, Jaylen found out that Bates had been asking mutual acquaintances about her work schedule. She started switching shifts, changing her hours, posting less on social media. But those adjustments didn't make her feel safer, they only wore her down. Bates didn't need to be loud. He just needed to be present close enough, long enough, to make sure Jaylen couldn't live a single day without looking over her shoulder. There was no live stream, no public post, no formal complaint. But the tension kept rising silently and steadily, like a string being wound tighter and tighter. And everyone knows, once a string is stretched to its limit, it takes just the slightest touch for everything to snap. The 24th of August, 2023. A quiet midweek morning in Columbia, South Carolina. The weather was unremarkable. The Heron Lake Apartments complex lay still, wrapped in its usual weekday calm. But inside the familiar unit where Jaylen Sarah Hasty lived, something had already unfolded, something silent, violent, and completely hidden from the world outside. Shortly before 9 a.m., the local fire department received a call reporting a water leak from one of the lower-level apartments. A routine maintenance issue, or so it seemed. The response team arrived promptly, knocked on the door of the suspected unit. No answer. Following emergency protocol, they proceeded to force entry. The door swung open, and in that instant, the nature of the morning changed completely. There was no sound of running water, no burst pipe, just a faint metallic scent hanging in the air, and an eerie, oppressive silence that filled the room. On the floor lay Jaylen, unresponsive, her body still and lifeless. A visible wound marked her upper body, and her face had lost all signs of life. Beside her was Canado Bates, the man who was once her boyfriend, the one she once trusted. He was severely injured, blood soaking through his shirt, eyes shut tight. Near them lay a gun no longer held by anyone. Within seconds, the rescue team realized this wasn't a water leak. They were standing in the middle of a haunting crime scene. Jaylen was pronounced dead at the scene. The wound indicated she had been shot at close range. There were no signs of a major struggle. No broken furniture. Everything seemed to have happened too quickly, too suddenly. Canado Bates was still alive when authorities arrived, though in critical condition. He was rushed to the hospital under strict police supervision. Police immediately sealed off the area, collected evidence, and photographed the position of the body, the gun, and surrounding items. The apartment showed no signs of forced entry. Hallway security cameras recorded no unfamiliar visitors. Everything pointed to one conclusion. This was an incident involving only two people in the room, and one of them would never be able to tell what really happened. Canado Bates, the man who was once her ex-boyfriend, had now become the sole suspect in a homicide. A case whose motive seemed to have been simmering beneath the surface for a long time, like a quiet flame waiting for the smallest spark to erupt into something devastating. What breaks people the most is knowing Jaylen never got a second chance. No moment to cry for help. No one there to intervene. It was just another ordinary morning until it suddenly became the last day of a woman who had lived wholeheartedly for her daughter, for her family, for her work, and for the belief that if she tried hard enough, things would get better. But that never happened. And on that morning, silence had the final word. Less than 10 minutes after the scene was discovered, the entire area around Jaylen's apartment was sealed off. Police vehicles lined up one after another, descending on Heron Lake Apartments. Outside, residents gathered in small clusters, faces filled with confusion, whispering, speculating, but no one truly knowing what had just happened. Some had lived there for years. They knew Jaylen, had greeted her in the elevator, had seen her walk her daughter to school in the mornings. No one could have imagined that this ordinary morning would become the city's breaking headline. News spread quickly. Police confirmed that a woman was pronounced dead at the scene and a man was critically injured and undergoing treatment. The names had yet to be officially released, but those who knew Jaylen had already begun to suspect. Messages started circulating within the community. Was it her? One of her co-workers broke down in tears over the phone. She didn't show up for work this morning. I thought she had just taken the day off. Canardo Bates was taken to the hospital in critical condition under the watch of armed police. He didn't attempt to flee, nor did he try to cover anything up. But it was his silence, complete and utter silence, that made investigators even more cautious. No explanation, no confession, not a single word of defense. He just lay there, motionless, as if he himself didn't yet understand what had just happened. For Jalen's family, the news struck like a blade straight to the heart. Her mother, Monica, was the first to be notified by the police. When she arrived at the scene, her daughter's body had already been covered by a white sheet, but she still recognized the shoes Jalen often wore, and the bracelet her granddaughter had gifted for Mother's Day still clung to her left wrist. Monica collapsed at the apartment door, no tears, no screams, just trembling in silence. The online community soon began sharing information about Jalen, along with photos of her and her daughter, moments from her quiet, everyday life. Everyone said, she was a good person. She didn't deserve this. But by then, it was already too late. A small memorial was spontaneously set up right in front of the apartment complex. Flowers, candles, handwritten notes, and apologies sent to a woman no longer here. A young girl who once lived on the same floor as Jalen left a message. "You used to smile at me every morning. I'm sorry I didn't see anything wrong. I'm sorry I couldn't help." And among those white wreaths, one question slowly began to surface, a question everyone thought, but no one dared say aloud. If there were so many signs, why didn't anyone stop this from happening?
Dozens of people gathered this afternoon in North Columbia to honor and celebrate the life of Jalen Sarah Hasty. She lost her life to gun violence exactly 1 year ago today. I spoke to her family members about the message they're sharing. Tears.
Grief comes in different forms and fashions, Lord God. She is the spitting image, not just because she looks like her mom. She has a big heart, a beautiful smile, and a caring spirit, just like her mother. There are people just like my daughter who don't share stories, and that's where I'm at. I want to be able to save someone else's daughter. We found one of Jalen's journal, and she's talked about things that happened way back in 2018. And if she never had the conversations with us, then we couldn't have been able to protect her, and we couldn't. But it all starts with just being able to communicate with somebody. And if it's not the somebody, your parents, then it needs to be an organization, just like Chandra's organization, just like Hey Brave Girl.
Don't let your pride get you killed, because there are times and places and organizations out here who can help you.
And that's all I'm here to do, is give someone some experience with what I'm going through, some strength on how to lean on God to get it, and some hope that 365 days today is not going to be the same not even 366 tomorrow, because my feet are on the ground and I'm running toward domestic violence, toward gun violence, toward anything that's going to help the generations, my grandbabies and the grandbabies behind me, people I know and people I don't know.
Canardo Bates was charged with Jalen's murder, kidnapping, and possession of a weapon during a violent crime. In connection with her death, he is still in jail.
From the very first hours after the incident, investigators from the Richland County Sheriff's Department determined this was not a random act or something caused by a stranger. Jalen's apartment showed no signs of forced entry. Nothing was broken. There was no evidence suggesting anyone else had been in the room besides her and Canardo Bates. The scene was too quiet, too orderly, and it was that eerie stillness that made everything feel so cold. The weapon recovered at the scene, the only firearm found inside the apartment, was examined and quickly confirmed to belong to Bates. His criminal record showed no major prior offenses, but a deeper investigation began to reveal disturbing patterns. Multiple accounts of him appearing unexpectedly near Jalen's home, neighbors describing how he would stand silently in the parking lot, watching from a distance. Gradually, Each small piece came together to form a clearer picture. This wasn't a sudden outburst. It was the slow, deliberate build-up of control, obsession, and an absolute refusal to let go. The most significant breakthrough came from the pages of Jaylen's journal. Police discovered a small notebook tucked inside her nightstand drawer. In it, she had recorded thoughts, emotions, and subtle details about her ex's disturbing behavior, dating back as far as 2018 and continuing right up to the final weeks before her death. These handwritten entries didn't count as formal legal evidence, but they stood as a powerful silent testimony, one that strengthened the suspicion that Jaylen had felt threatened, even though she never officially spoke up to authorities. On the 2nd of September, 2023, after nearly a week in the hospital, Kenardo Bates was discharged and immediately taken into custody. He was transported to the Alvin S. Glenn Detention Center and formally charged with 3 serious offenses: murder, kidnapping, and possession of a weapon during the commission of a violent crime. The second charge, kidnapping, was added after investigators determined that Jaylen may have been unlawfully restrained inside the apartment against her will. There were no signs indicating that she had been able to leave safely before the fatal incident occurred. Bates remained silent. He offered no confession nor any resistance. His attorney issued a brief statement saying that all facts will be addressed during the legal process and that the client is still under medical observation. The media was given no further access to him beyond his initial court appearance. In that moment, clad in an orange prison jumpsuit, Bates kept his eyes downcast, his face unreadable, void of emotion. As of the most recent update, the case has not yet reached its final trial. Bates remains in custody. There has been no indication that he is seeking leniency, nor has any formal appeal been filed. Everything remains in the hands of the legal process. Crucial questions still hang unanswered. Was there evidence that the act was premeditated? Were any prior threats overlooked by law enforcement? And perhaps most hauntingly, is the current system truly enough to protect people like Jaylen? Jaylen's family, while waiting for justice to be served, has refused to remain silent. Her mother, Monica Hatton, founded an organization called A Voice for JSA, not just to honor her daughter's memory, but to support other women facing similar threats. Through workshops, scholarships, and the continued sharing of Jaylen's story, they aim to sound the alarm loud enough so no more warnings go unheard. As for the case, it's still ongoing. But until a final verdict is reached, one truth remains crystal clear: a woman is gone. Because the warning signs were there, and no one truly listened. Jaylen Sarah Hasty, 29 years old, a single mother, a daughter, a friend, a woman who once loved, once trusted, once tried to do everything right. Now, she exists only in memorial posts, in framed photos on the wall, and in the lonely cry of "Mom" from a child too young to understand why that door will never open again. This case is not just the tragic ending of a broken relationship. It's a piercing wake-up call about the dangers of control, disguised as love, about the seemingly harmless signs that, in truth, are warnings of looming danger. In Jaylen's case, it wasn't that she didn't see it, but that she believed she could still manage it, that she could step away safely. But the line between "it's still possible" and "it's already too late" is sometimes just a few footsteps across a familiar apartment floor. We need to say this clearly and without evasion. Control is not love. Jealousy is not care. A past relationship does not give someone the right to harm, just because they were no longer chosen. Social media, once a place for sharing and connection, can also become a battlefield for conflict, a place where posts are twisted, photos are monitored, and calls must not be ignored. Jaylen once tried to live in peace, stayed silent, and hoped it would all pass. But that silence did not save her. So the greatest lesson from this case, not just for those directly involved, but for all of us, is this: never ignore the warning signs, no matter how small. A message that feels coercive, a gaze that never looks away, a person who keeps showing up where they weren't invited. That creeping feeling of being watched, which you dismiss as being too sensitive. No, it's your body speaking up, your instincts trying to alert you. And if you don't listen, there may be no one else left who can. Jaylen's family lost their light. Her child lost a mother. And the community lost a living reminder that Breaking up is never an excuse to take someone's life.